We are all college football fans. We support this great game no matter what. But why do you love college football? We love it because of the traditions that make the game so special. There are so many schools we grew up around or even attended. We love it because it just feels a part of you, more than anything else that the sports world can offer. But looking at it objectively, the sport honestly sucks. What? I love college football and I always have. Growing up, I loved the Florida Gators during the Tim Tebow era, and then I moved on to TCU because I loved the Horned Frogs, and I loved how they were always really good but flew under the radar. And then I became a Louisville fan during the Lamar Jackson years, and while I still support these three schools, college football for me has sucked, and I bet it has sucked for most of you watching this video. It's the constant disappointment of seeing teams do so well during the year, and doing all they could to possibly compete for a title, but even the smallest slip up cost them at that chance. And that's why I'm starting to believe more and more the older that I get, college football in reality honestly sucks. Now, will I stop watching it? No. Sucks honestly is not the right word. Maybe heartbreaking is, but this is a video I really wanted to make because I think I have some good arguments. So let's start from the top. This is what ruins everything, and it's dramatic even trying to get young kids to sign with your program, and it's getting harder to convince them. Some of the best coaches in college football are leaving the sport, like Urban Meyer or Chris Peterson, because of the stress that it can put on older coaches. Even some of the best coaches I grew up watching in the sport are struggling to compete with the top dogs, even though they used to be able to. Guys like David Shaw, Mark D'Antonio, Gary Patterson. Negative recruiting is not new, and it probably will never go away, but schools sending bad stuff about others and trying to find every negative thing and sending it to a kid that's in high school is kind of toxic. Like, instead of just telling the kid all they can gain from your school, they decide to just attack another and try to bring them down to increase their school's odds. Whether it's the fact recruiting starts at such a young age, or all the negatives that is included with it, and with the increasing use of social media, kids care way more about creating their own brand and playing for a team that will give them the best opportunity to showcase that. And honestly, what I just said is fine, and it's not new, but it does feel like most of the younger kids would rather play for themselves rather than playing as a team. And once the NCAA starts letting kids profit off their own name, which I'm kind of for, I feel like this is going to be used in recruiting, and teams are going to start increasing their social media teams. Now, to contradict myself, I really don't have a big issue with kids wanting to earn more money, or even do what's in the best interest of themselves. I just wanted to point out some issues that people point out in recruiting. Recruiting is what wins in college football. You can't even compete if you don't have the same level of talent, which is really what the root of this entire video is. If you look at recruiting class rankings from the past 5 years at the top, it seems like college football every year is dominated by these schools: Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. They are always at the top, and no one can touch them when they're at full strength, and 7 of the past 8 titles have been won by these schools. But thankfully last night, LSU ended that. Go Tigers! The last Cinderella team we've seen compete for a title was Auburn back in 2013, and it took some miracles for them to get that opportunity, but since then, there really hasn't been anything. And Auburn even won a title in 2010, so it's not like they were some under-the-radar team. If you don't have about 2 or 3 straight recruiting classes that are at the top, then you are not going to be good. Unless you are Butch Jones at Tennessee. I don't know how he never won, because he always had great recruiting classes. And speaking of Tennessee football, recruiting has killed a lot of the top programs that I grew up watching, and whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing for you watching, to me, it's really boring. It sucks seeing programs like Miami, Nebraska, Tennessee, Florida State, USC, and Texas not being very good, or maybe having only one good year and then going back to the bottom. I want to see these schools be good, and the only ones getting these recruits are the top dogs, and it just makes things boring when you have only a couple teams competing for a title. And that's what leads into my next topic. So this is the biggest turnoff for me with college football. Every year it's Alabama and Clemson for the past 4 years, and then it's always Ohio State and Oklahoma who follow. And then teams like Georgia, LSU, Notre Dame, and Oregon are always in the mix. But in reality, it's just dominated by Alabama and Clemson, and it's definitely going to be Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson at the top again next year, so it's going to be a miracle for whoever is the 4th seed, and if they can somehow knock off one of them. And that's why college football is annoying. There are 130 FBS teams, and yet only 3 have a real shot at winning the title, and it's been like that for honestly the past 4 to 5 years. Thank God LSU has been a breath of fresh air this year, but heroes don't last long in college football because they could become the new villain if they stick around too long. And I know that's what's going to happen probably with teams like Georgia with Kirby Smart, and it's already happening for me with Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley. And despite these two being good all year and being the 4th and 5th best teams in the rankings, they had no shot to compete for the title. Some years we get lucky and the sport is full of parity, like 2007 when all hell broke loose. The number 2 team ranked in the nation lost 7 times in the final 9 weeks of the season. The 1 and 2 teams ranked lost during the same week 3 times, and it happened both of the final 2 weeks of the regular season. But still, we could have had Kansas, Missouri, West Virginia, or maybe Boston College in the national title game, but we still somehow ended up with LSU and Ohio State. It's like even when all hell breaks loose, we still end up with the power programs competing for the title. and that's why I feel like I have a good argument. Even the years when we get a Washington, Notre Dame, or Michigan State into the playoff, they just get blown out and had no reason to be there. This year, no team should have been in the playoff besides the top 3, except for Alabama with a healthy Tua. I used to be a huge proponent for expanding the playoff to 6 to 8 teams because a team like the 2014 TCU Horned Frogs, who I think could have competed for the title, were robbed of a shot at it, which I will get into more about that later. But OSU took their spot and won the title, so I don't even know if they actually should have made it. I hate watching just the same teams dominate, and even if it's not the same team winning the title every year, it's still a 3 to 5 team race, depending on the year, and that's not much fun to watch. I think another thing that plays into these teams dominating is how much time they get off to prepare for the playoff and the title game, and I think that's why better teams almost always win. When you have less time to prepare every week on a short schedule, it makes it hard to plan for absolutely everything. If the playoff began right after conference championship week, I think that we would see more upsets, and if we expanded to just 2 to 4 more teams. We put so much on winning the title that what's the point of playing if you can't even get a shot at it? I get that you can play for your brothers, you can improve your skills, and play the game you love while earning an education, which I agree with, but it still is annoying we have less teams competing it seems like every year. Even the NFL playoffs this year is off to a crazy start, and both conferences' 6 teams have won, and we are going to get a different team in the Super Bowl for both conferences this year. I think things are only going to get more wide open going into the future. I really appreciate excellence, and I respect the hell out of what Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State have accomplished, but I hate the argument that is made saying college football is more fun to watch since there are more teams competing for a title. When all the top recruits are going to the same schools, it makes everything boring, and you just don't usually get that in other sports, and even in college basketball. Like, college basketball has had a different champion the past 7 out of 8 tournaments, and that's what makes the sport fun, and even if the same blue bloods dominate the sport, there is more opportunity for other schools to still win a title. But to play devil's advocate, I can't disrespect these teams that get the high recruits and win, because they obviously are able to get the most out of these athletes and develop them and get the wins. Because I've seen it time and time again where teams have the best recruiting classes and don't get the most out of their players. Teams like UCLA, Tennessee, USC, Texas A&M, Miami. But sometimes we get a diamond in the rough and they have a dream season and do all they can to make the playoff, and then we have the next issue. The college football playoff is the greatest thing to ever happen to college football, because even though I've complained in this video, no number 1 team in the playoff era has ever won the title, except for last night when LSU won the title, but obviously you get my point. And that should be enough to shut me up, but I wanted to do some more complaining. The BCS was trash because teams were absolutely robbed of a playoff spot. Like, if the BCS was still around, we might not have had Ohio State in 2015 or Alabama in 2018 winning the title. And maybe Clemson this year wouldn't have had a shot at it either, because they were ranked number 3, so there is definitely good in the college football playoff. So why am I complaining? Well, maybe it's just the fact that I'm a salty TCU fan who has been robbed twice in his life, and I have a legit argument. In 2010, it was Auburn, Oregon, and TCU who were all undefeated, and TCU got the short end of the stick. And you know what? It's fine, because they still finished as the number 2 team in the nation, which is still a huge accomplishment. But then again, in 2014, in the first year of the college football playoff, TCU was moved from the number 3 seed to the number 6 seed in the final ranking, even though they went out and won their final game and did all they could. Now, the committee shouldn't have had TCU at 3 to begin with, if they knew that OSU winning and Baylor winning would trump them. Maybe I'm just an upset TCU fan, but there are always going to be teams like TCU that have or will get snubbed for a team with a higher ceiling because of their name. I want to see a team like Utah have a dream season and make a run at the title like they did this year. I want to see a team like Baylor, who went through program hell to get a shot to compete for the title after having a year for the ages, rather than just getting sent to another bowl game. I want to see a team like UCF get a shot in a larger playoff and show the world that they are more than just a school from the American. I want to see a team like Minnesota, with their fearless leader, go in and give it their all versus one of the best in the sport and reward them for their incredible season. I know these teams don't have as much talent. They probably shouldn't be there most of the time, but I just find it so annoying that only a select amount of schools can compete for a title. I think the committee has done a pretty good job every year ever since the TCU situation back in 2014 happened, which is honestly all I can ask for, because I hate seeing people get their hopes up. But sports are fun when more teams get a shot, and I would love to see 6 teams and maybe the first 2 get a bye. I know that complain about the talent pool, and yeah, most of these teams might get blown out, but then for a season that a TCU or UCF comes around, they can show off just how good they actually are. Now, with all the negative I had in this video, college football for me is still great, and I definitely will keep watching it going into the future. Every game is so meaningful in the long run, and that's what makes it so fun to watch every week, because you never know if your season will be on the line, and basically, every other league offers you more chances to still compete for a title if you lose a couple times. The traditions you see in college football are sometimes way better than anything you will see in professional sports, because there are schools that people attend and pay money for, and it just has way more meaning. And for some states, this is the only football they have there, and it just means way more for them. The The fans are extremely passionate. It doesn't matter what school it is, you will see people in the stands at every game and rooting on whoever they cheer for. And that's why college football is great. It's really great if you're a spoiled fan, but even the lesser schools still have passionate fan bases with their own traditions, and that's a big reason why I enjoy watching. Also, you get to see the younger talent before it gets to the NFL. Since the NFL is America's league, then college football is where it all begins. And I know that's a big reason why we all watch college football. There are so many ideas I have to fix college football, but obviously, some of them are kind of crazy. I think that getting rid of conferences and putting all the best teams together would be so much fun. Giving every power conference a bid, and then having 3 at-large teams from wherever, but I doubt we ever see this much drastic change because things are set up like this for a reason, but it's just kind of fun to speculate on my part. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and honestly, leave me a comment telling me why you love college football, or even what you hate about it. Thank you for watching everyone, and I will see you in the next video.